What's up guys, it's me Deshaun, and today we'll be ranking the 7 great powers in Mushoku Tensei. These 7 great powers are the gods of the series, and they are also known as the strongest fighters across the world. We will be going over their lore and abilities, because thankfully we don't have to think that hard because they are already ranked. To start this off, we have the weakest god, the god of the North, Alexander Rybak, or another alias, Kalman III. Now, Karl Rybak, Kalman I, and Alex Rybak, Kalman II, were the original gods of the North. It seems as if each generation still holds a spot amongst the 7 great powers. And that would be something shared between each and every power, because every single one of their descendants would continue to maintain a spot as the strongest. For most of them, at least. Now, there are 3 major sword styles in the world of Mushoku Tensei, and each of them kind of have a rock, paper, scissors relationship when it comes to clashing against one another. We have North God style, Water God style, and Sword God style. North God would lose to Sword God, but would excel against Water God. And this would be Alexander's same sword style, the North God style. Alexander is so strong that during his fight with Rudius would use his iconic spell Quagmire, where he would basically sink you into mud or quicksand and immobilize you. Immediately after using this spell, he would use his other spell, Stone Cannon. Stone Cannon would also be the same attack that would damage Orsted, the dragon god. And this same attack would also kill Body Gotti, the fighting god. Alek is so skilled and strong, he would easily be able to redirect the trajectory of these attacks as they are coming at him. And he would also be able to resist Rudius's Quagmire, not sinking one bit. Amongst these feats, he would also wield the Dragon King sword, which would be the strongest sword in the world. As Alek's father Sander said, with that sword in hand, no matter how large the beast, no matter how agile the monster, no matter how strong the soldier, they were no match. I won countless battles and became a hero with that sword. Sandor would say that himself, as he would have wielded this sword for 100 years and became a hero with it, before he would then give this sword and the title of North God to Alek. Unfortunately, unlike his father, Alek does not have the same constitution that is required to become a hero. Instead, he would crave the fame of being one, causing a clash between the second North God and the third as well. While Alek is fighting his father parries his attacks and destroys Alek's posture. It is at this moment that is revealed that the Dragon Sword, or in this case, the Cursed Dragon King Sword, would have the ability of gravity manipulation, and this would be how he was able to repel Rudius's stone cannons. Alongside this, he would be able to move freely as much as he wants. This movement would be so great that despite the fact that Rudius would have foresight, he still wouldn't be able to predict Alek's movements. Even while fighting his father, Rudius tried to attack him again. It would curve and go straight into the forest. And while doing all of this, it was later revealed that he was holding back so he could fight Orsted. But later on in this fight, he would stop holding back, and we would get a taste of his true power from his secret technique, Gravity Rupture. He would cause everything to float around him, including his opponents, suspending them in the air, creating a flash of light and an explosion that you would not be able to defend against. As the fight would progress after this ultimate ability, we would later then find out that Alek was getting overwhelmed by Rudius, Rugierd, Aris, and Sandor, as he would ask the ogre god Malta for help. It seems as though in terms of power, he would match all of them, and it would make sense as to why he would be the weakest of the 7 powers. And because he would use the North God sword style, the Sword God style would actually be able to counter him. Just like when Aris cuts off his arm when using the ultimate technique of the Sword God style. Hopefully all of this information would give you enough context as to why he would be the lowest rank. Up next, we have the Sword God Galfarian, the man that would teach both Aris and Ghislaine. And just like how his disciple was able to cut off Alek's hand, he he would be the master of the sword god sword style that would be the direct counter to the North god sword style, putting him above Alek. The craziest part is the fact that he's not even the strongest of his sword style. And the crazy thing is he can also use water god style as well. Rada, the head of the water god style, Rada, despite being old, would still retain the same exact strength that she would have had in her prime. And despite the water god style being a direct counter to the sword god style, Galfarian's sword would be unblockable for her, just as it was unblockable for Alek. Alek would have the strongest sword in the world, but that would mean nothing against the strongest swordsman, or at least the second strongest, behind Gino Britz. During Galfarian's fight with Ares, he would use the world's strongest sword technique, Long Sword of Light, but displayed at a level which had never been seen by Ares before, the level of a sword god. To put this into perspective, Ares used Long Sword of Light against Alek and completely decimated him. If we would have put Galfarian in that same predicament, I doubt Alek would have walked away alive, even if he uses the world's strongest sword. I could only imagine how strong the sword god would be if he used that same sword. Now up next for the 5th strongest power, we have Randolph Marianne, the god of death. Not only would he be experienced in the North god style similar to Alek, on top of this he would be a self-styled warrior, making him an anomaly, his own unique swordsman. His sword style would be the Sword of Bewitching. Because of this unorthodox method of combat, most warriors would not know how to deal with him, giving him an advantage over most swordsmen, if not all. There is a reason why he is not the god of the sword, but rather the god of death. The art of dealing death would be completely different from the art of mastering a sword. Swordsmanship would be a simple dance and or game, but when up against Randolph, you're signed up into a game of already losing. His Sword of Bewitching style is a combination of 2 styles, the Sword of Luring and the Sword of Hesitation. The Sword of Luring entices an enemy to an attack when he should be retreating, while the Sword of Hesitation forces an enemy to retreat when they should attack. Basically, if you spot an opening as you are fighting Randolph, that opening would only be a trap. And if you are retreating, thinking it's a good idea to back off of your opponent, you're simply giving them an opening to kill you. At any given moment, his deceptive mind games are putting you in a situation where you're going to die. In a battle, he manipulates the opponent, making him attack when he shouldn't, defend when he shouldn't, and it messes up your timing. He forces you to attack when you think you should guard, and guard when you think you should attack. Another feat to add alongside of Randolph's would be the fact that he was the original candidate to become the North God. Alongside this, he would have experience under the Water God style and the North God style, as I mentioned before. And on top of being a master swordsman with his own unique style, he would also possess a Devil Eye, the Absolute Void Eye, which allows him to construct barriers. Magic would also be unusable against the Death God because he would have magic absorbing stones within the palm of his leather fencing gloves. And he would have a lot more tools at his disposal because he can also use magic as well. He can use magic, nullify your magic, knows 2 of the major sword styles, has his own unorthodox sword style, has a demon eye, and honestly, at least to me, he might not have the same amount of firepower as Alek in his gravity sword, or the exact skills that Gal would have. And even though Randolph is past his prime, I kind of just get the feeling that he's a little more consistent than the other 2. Even if he's past his prime, I'd say Randolph past his prime is debatable on whether or not he's stronger, even though he still retains his rank. But I think for certain we can say in his prime he's murking him. Even though you can take into account that Kalman II was fighting Alek and giving him a run for his money, If you were to put Randolph in that situation, I feel like he's more skilled than Kalman II, and he would beat Alek. But honestly, that's just some fruit for thought. So if you disagree with who would win when it comes to the bottom 3 ranks, that is just fine. Up next, we have the 4th rank 7th power, the demon side of Laplace. Now, there's some things about Laplace I'm gonna save for later, but Laplace was originally one being. He was the Demon Dragon King, and one of the 5 Dragon Kings that would help the Dragon God protect the Dragon World. Now, when it comes to his demon side, which would be the 4th ranked power, he would be a master of all types of magic and have an enormous pool of it. And he would be the cause of the Great Laplace War, where he would unite all of the demon race and almost put an end to all of humanity. He would lose his memories, and this would cause him to be rather evil. Alongside this, he would strictly be a mage because he would have lost his dragon side and would no longer have access to his dragon battle aura. His demon form would be so strong, he would kill 4 of the 7 legendary heroes that would dare challenge him during the Laplace War. And the only way he would be able to be defeated was by being sealed away. There's more to talk about in terms of Laplace's character, but we're going to save that for later. So up next, we'd have the 3rd strongest, Body Gotti, the fighting god. For starters, Body Gotti would be an immortal demon king. So he's been alive for a very long time. He would have been alive before the Great Laplace War. As his title ensues, that he is the fighting god, it is only natural that he would also wield the fighting god armor. Or another name for it would be golden armor, that Laplace would have also created. Funny how even though I'm talking about Body Gotti, it just shows you how strong Laplace is. But to get back to Body Gotti in this armor, this might be one of the most broken armors I've ever witnessed in any anime. Or in this case, light novel. I'd like to note that Body Gotti would be a fighter with no real style. The fighting god armor gives its user the strongest power possible, and it would hijack your mind. It is sentient. It would use your mana as fuel and drain your very life force until you eventually die. But in Body Gotti's hands, it can operate forever. When anyone wears this armor, it would automatically shape-shift and form itself to fit the user's shape perfectly. This armor is so smart. Depending on the user, it would also give them the most optimal weapon. Most magic, when up against the armor, is ineffective. This thing is so strong. Even Orsted himself said he does not know how to defeat it. The user of this armor would feel no pain or fatigue and will constantly fight at full strength. In this case, Body Gotti would fight at his fullest strength unlimitedly, and it will force you to move. A downside of the armor would be the fact that it does not heal injuries, but good luck actually getting past the armor to damage the user underneath. In the hands of Body Gotti, even if he were to die, the fighting armor will continue to operate, still fighting, even if you somehow get past the defenses and kill the user. Another crazy thing though is the fact that even though the armor can't heal the user underneath it, it can reform itself and repair, meaning that the armor will heal itself but not its user. Even though the armor will self-repair itself and it does not heal its user, you could easily work past this by simply being a part of a demon race that could regenerate itself, like Body Gotti or Alexander. This armor is so strong that it is the sole reason as to why Laplace was split up between his dragon and demon form. In a similar fashion, he had to split up Body Gotti from the armor. And this magic attack is what caused the creation of the Ring Sea. This armor is so disgusting in the hands of Body Gotti, it would serve as Hitogami's final card, one of the last threats in the entire series. I also mentioned earlier that Body Gotti had no real style of his own in terms of fighting, and this armor would more than make up for it. It had trained in all sorts of weapons and imitated many different martial arts and could analyze the flow of battle. and even possessed a repertoire of over 1,000 secret techniques to automatically decide what was the most optimal for the current situation it faced. Automatic battle armor that pushes you to its very limits and has over thousands of different fighting styles at its fingertips, automatically dodging, attacking, and repairing itself, and is resistant to magic. This armor in itself and the fact that Bodyguardi could use it would make him the 3rd rank for good reason. Up next, for the 2nd rank, we have Orsted. Despite being the 2nd rank, he is actually known as the strongest, and he would be the current dragon god. Unfortunately for Orsted, he'd have a curse that would make him hated and feared by all living things that see his face. His father would also be the 1st dragon god. And moments before, the humans and dragons waged war against one another, with Hitogami, the man god, fighting, obviously, the dragon god would name his son Orsted and send him into the future. Time travel would be a very interesting aspect when it comes to Orsted's character, because one of his greatest strengths would be his ability to create a time loop when he dies. Whenever he dies, he would basically pull a ReZero, reset, and start everything over. Because of the countless new game pluses Orsted would have, and taking into account his dragon god heritage, in terms of all manner and sword play, he would be in a completely different league than the entire cast of this series. He would have a battle aura that would basically block most attacks that were to come at him. On top of this, he can chant incantations or magic without saying a word. Just like Rudeus, he is so skilled. After witnessing a technique like Rudeus's dual casting, he was able to do it as well, just by observing it visually. He is the strongest character in all of Mushoku Tensei. The only reason why he isn't number 1 is because the technique god, or Laplace, does not show up in the story. He's so strong at one point in the series, he fought Alek. But Alek would not only be equipped with the strongest sword in the entire series, but the fighting god armor as well. And Orsted would easily defeat him. This was the same armor that I mentioned before that Bodyguardi wore. On top of this, if he uses healing magic, he can restore any body part instantly, even bringing Rudeus back from the dead after putting a hole inside of Rudeus's chest. So his healing factor is pretty insane. On top of that, he can disturb your magic, basically cutting it off, canceling it, so you won't ever be able to use it. And because of the amount of loops he's been in, he knows how to defeat any type of opponent. For example, if you were to fight a mage, typically the best way and quickest, most efficient way to dispose of them would be to damage or destroy their lungs so they would not be able to cast spells. The hundreds of thousands of scenarios and time loops that he would have experienced makes him unbeatable. On top of this, he would have a god sword, which can literally cut anything within several kilometer range. It is so strong, Orsted would have a 10-minute limit. This same sword would be what would help him defeat Kalman III while he was using the Dragon King sword and the fighting god armor. He is so strong, he has a curse that keeps him from going all out in combat. Yet despite this, he is still destroying every last character in Mushoku Tensei. How are you nerfed and you're still at a god level? I do not know. But put some respect on Orsted, because he is capable of destroying the planet if he so pleased. Now up next, for the number 1 ranked power and strongest character outside of Orsted, we have Laplace's Dragon Side, the technique god. The amount of feats Laplace has in this series is ridiculous. If it isn't making the fighting god armor, mastering every single type of magic inside of the series, having a battle that created the Ringus Sea, and devising a plan to take down Hitogami, and even creating the 7 Great Powers ranking system himself, and practically creating Orsted, teaching him all of his techniques and powers so that the same Dragon God would be able to defeat Hitogami in the first place, Laplace, even while split in two, would without a doubt be the strongest in the entirety of the series, causing a war that was named after him, the Laplace War, and causing most of the major events that happen in the series. Yeah, I don't think you can really argue with this. With all that being said, don't forget to like and subscribe, and please consider donating to the Patreon. There are more videos I'd like for you guys to see, so please consider clicking on them right now after you like and subscribe. With that, hope y'all have a good one. Subscribe for more Mushoku Tensei content, and with that, I'm out.